Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Vayera that we read this coming Shabbat. And this is the fourth Sedra in the book of Bereshis, as we are really making inroads. And it is the second Sedra, the continuation of the account of Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our father's lifetime events journey, a literal journey that started last week, but more than a literal journey. It's a journey into life, into his life, into all of our lives. And very famously, Avraham Avinu is associated with the 10, I will call them nisyonot. They are, it's translated as tests or trials. But really, not only specifically to the 10, but to the events that are recorded about Avraham Avinu's life, I want to rebrand. I want to suggest that we rethink. And from this concept of trial and test, which I think, while certainly being honest about the challenges that Avraham Avinu had to endure and faced, but I think when we actually have proof that the word nisyonot, from the root nes, can also be translated as something that is raising up. And I think that we can actually come to see these as opportunities that Avraham Avinu really realized to the full. And in so doing, he has set the bar very high, but he has given us the concepts, the ideas, and in our DNA, which we have inherited from him, he has given us the ability to view the nisyonot of our own life in perhaps another and more uplifting way. So the Mishnah, the concept of the 10 tests is actually found in Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, which is chapter 5, Mishnah 4. And I'm going to read that out. Asara nisyonot nisnasa Avraham Avinu va'amad b'cholam. With 10, and I'll translate it as trials, our father Abraham was tested. Va'amad b'cholam. He stood. Literally, he stood. It's translated in the Ethics of Our Fathers as he stood firm in all of them. Lahodia, to inform. Kama chibaso shel Avraham Avinu. How great was the love of Avraham Avinu? And in brackets we have for God, that the fact that Avraham Avinu withstood these 10 nisyonot is an indication of the love that Abraham has for Hashem. The Hebrew actually is a little bit ambiguous because Kama chibaso shel Avraham Avinu, it could also be translated as how great is his love of Avraham Avinu, in which case we are actually talking about Hashem. That with these 10 nisyonot, Hashem is actually showing Avraham that he loves him very much. And this is a hard concept because some of these were very challenging situations to be in. And I want to focus on 3, the count of the 10, there is only one of these that are specifically referenced as a nes, as a nisayon, as when with the Akedah, which is counted by most commentators as the 10th of the 10 nisyonot, but only with the Akedah does the Chumash in chapter 22, verse 1. Is the word actually used, and it goes Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela, and it was after these words, va'alahim nisa es Avraham, and God tested Abraham. That's the only time that we've got this idea of a test in the Torah. But I'm going to be looking at 3 events in the Sedra of Vayera, and I think that we can really find these opportunities, the telling of what happened, what was said, how it was said, give us such strong and relevant messages for us always, as with everything. The first I'll start with is the opening psukim of this week's Sedra, which talk about the post-operative recuperation of Avraham Avinu after his bris. The Medrash tells us that this was on the third day after his bris, when pain is at its highest level, often after surgery, and Avraham is recuperating, or recuperating Avraham style. That is, he is, the Medrash tells us that it is especially hot, and one reason suggested is that because of the extreme heat, the visitors will be deterred from coming, because Avraham Avinu is renowned for his hachnasat orchim, for his opening his home to guests. Famously, his tent has doors on 4 sides. All 4 compass points have an entrance to welcome people from whichever direction they're coming. And in order to just enable Avraham Avinu to take it easy, Hashem makes exceptionally hot weather, and he is supposed to take it easy because of that, because there's nobody out and about. Another explanation given is that this extreme heat was actually part of the healing process post the bris milah that Avraham endured at the advanced age, excuse me, of 99. And whatever the case, Avraham Avinu is desperate for guests. And we are, on the one hand, shown the extreme dedication, really beyond what we could really imagine, that a man at such an advanced age who has undergone a procedure is still so focused on this mitzvah, and you know, we can just imagine ourselves perhaps just wanting peace and quiet, and really this is not the case at all. And we feel actually that, my goodness, this is something I couldn't even aspire to. But very fascinatingly, recently, I think it was before COVID, but there was a leader in the Times that was quoting a scientific study that the doctors in certain cancer wards and chemotherapy wards were prescribing, in inverted commas, that patients should help other patients, should help feed other patients. This was a hospital study. This is a medical study that actually took place. And the sort of counterintuitive conclusion was that the patients experienced the best pain relief when they helped other people, when they helped other patients, when they helped to feed other patients, when they helped to cheer up other patients who were perhaps worse off than they. And it just occurred to me as I was reading this account of Avraham Avinu being so desperate for the opportunity to welcome wayfarers into his home. And I don't think that we should advocate people ignore medical advice when they're told that they have to rest, and start leaping around and preparing banquets for guests as they come in. But this concept, this idea that somebody, even when they are feeling unwell themselves, is actually going to be the biggest beneficiary when they start helping other people. And I thought, as I read this study, as I read the leader in the Times, and I just thought, well, that's the general concept of the mitzvah. And really, this is what Avraham Avinu is showing us in this opening section of the Sedra, that he has got an opportunity here. Yes, he is recovering, and really he needs to take it easy. Yet it is going to help him heal when he is able to help other people, when he's able to provide that hospitality. So this is the first concept of seeing something that looks like a very painful challenge, but actually is transformed into an opportunity that Avraham Avinu is going to help other people, and in so doing, help himself most of all. So that was the first example that I wanted to point out. The second example is going to be the concept, the chapter of 22 that deals with the Akedah. And the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, is something that is so dramatic. And many books that have a few essays on each Sedra will devote most of their content to discussing the Akedah. This is something that has really perplexed and almost traumatized in the reading of the story of the Akedah. How could Hashem have asked this of Avraham? How could Avraham have been prepared to do it? It's so counterintuitive, and there are so many different explanations and ways to view it, but it is a very painful account to read, and especially when Avraham has to be told, as he is bound Isaac to the altar, and he's told at the last minute, as he lifts the knife to his throat, Al tishlach yadcha el hanar, don't send out your hand. He has to be almost pulled back at the last minute from committing the deed, and we are used to seeing it in this very traumatic way. But I want to also apply perhaps more controversially here, the logic of an opportunity. What opportunity was this? This command, the instruction to Avraham Avinu that he needs to take his son, the son that he loves, the son that his wife Sarah bore him, the long-awaited son, the son that's going to be the progenitor of the nation, and this all of these painful details. And the medrash, based on the words, actually, when the instruction given is v'ha'alehu la'olah, and that is that's at the beginning of the account. That is chapter 22, verse 2. Vayomer, and he said, referring to Hashem, Kachna es bincha es yechidcha asher ahavta, take your son, your only son that you love, es Yitzchak, velech lecha el Eretz HaMoriah, and go to the land of Moriah, v'ha'alehu sham la'olah, and bring him up there as la'olah, which is translated as an offering, al achad hehorim asher omar elecha, on one of the mountains that I will show you. And basing it on this particular verse, where he is not told to, Avraham Avinu is not told to slaughter his son, he's told to raise him up. The Medrash concludes that Avraham interpreted the instruction as bring him as an offering, and this was actually never Hashem's intention. But I think we need to see this in the context of the time period where child sacrifice was rampant, and even though Avraham Avinu has been campaigning against child sacrifice, which of course makes this even more bizarre that he should be asked to do this, but he possibly thinking, because this is what is going on around him, that's what Hashem must have referred to when he used that phrase. And it was his interpretation, perhaps influenced by the surrounding culture. But Rabbi Sachs Zatzal points out that in the ancient times, the father figure, the pater familias, as he was known, was a very powerful figure. And really, the rest of the family, the wife and the children, were considered the chattels, the property of the father. And perhaps because the father thought of his children in this way, that they are literally his property, that he is then free to do something like take the child to the priest and sacrifice, because that child belongs to him. He has this right of ownership, as it were. And the opportunity of the Akedah is a lesson for Avraham Avinu and a lesson to all of us, that the children that we are blessed with are not our property. They are a gift from Hashem. And when you look at our culture, when you look at the words of the Torah, when you look at the concept of children being the future, there's a phrase, Al tikra bonayich ela bonayich, and that means don't say your children, but your builders. The children are a blessing and a gift and the future, and they are valued, and without being, without wanting to raise children who think they can do anything and do what they like in a sort of a completely child-centered culture, without indulging, but to really value and treat children as precious and treat children as a blessing. And really, this is a very, very different worldview to the worldview that could lead to child sacrifice. And so this is a way, the drama of the Akedah, that is seared into all of us as we read it every year, as we read it over Rosh Hashanah. And this is something that we live with and we grapple with. But really, it is a way of teaching for at his time in history for Avraham Avinu. But today as well, we might think, gosh, yes, these are my children, they belong to me. And the way that Avraham is, after he goes through the Akedah, after we go through the Akedah with him as we read it, we think of our children as a gift from Hashem, as a blessing, and it is a different concept, it's an opportunity to relate to children in a different way. And this is something that we can get from from what is called by most commentators the 10th and the final test, that Avraham that Avraham literally stood up to, and we'll come back to that word in the Mishnah at the end. The third section of the Sedra that I want to refer to in this vein is a section that could so easily be glossed over, especially in a Sedra that has such a lot of dramatic things going on. We have the destruction Sodom and Amorah, we have Lot and his daughters, we have the Akedah that really monopolizes so much of the commentary and the thought. So this section, which is actually the section that talks about Sarah's reaction when she hears the angel towards the beginning of the Sedra, telling Avraham, and again, this is very unusually, we are given details that we don't normally hear from the Torah. So we have the exact placement of Sarah standing at the entrance of the tent, and in front of her is the angel, the messenger, angel in human form. She can see his back, so it seems that he is not facing her. He can't, possibly he can't see her. And Avraham is standing in front of the angel. And we have this placement. We read about this in chapter 21. Chapter 20, no, chapter 21. We read about this in chapter 18, verses 9 to 15. So I'm just going to read them out. Okay, Vayomru Elav, and they said to him, so they being the three angels, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, where is Sarah your wife? Vayomer, and he said, Hine va'ohel, behold, she is in the tent. Vayomer shov oshuv elecha ka'es chaya, I will surely return to you at this time next year. V'hinei ven l'Sara, and there will be a son to Sarah ishtecha, your wife. V'Sara shemas pesach ha'ohel, and Sarah is listening at the entrance of the tent. V'hu acharav, and it was behind him. So this it, which is something that Rashi points out, is referring to not the angel, but the entrance of the tent that has just been mentioned. So we can actually visualize the entrance, Sarah in the entrance, the angel in front of the entrance is behind him, and he is talking to Avraham. And carrying on. Avraham and Sarah zikanim, and Avraham and Sarah are old. Ba'im bayomim, advanced in days. Chadal lios l'Sara orach kanoshim. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So we have to really absorb this. And especially in a Sedra that has so much other content, that it is easy to miss. We know the exact ages of Sarah and Avraham. We know that they're old. And we are fairly safe to say that Sarah is no longer fertile. These are things that must be particularly relevant to everything that is being said right now, because we're hearing it again. And then the Pesukim continue, Vatitzchak Sarah Bekirba. And again, this is translated in different ways. And Sarah laughed inwardly. So Sarah's response, she has overheard this fantastic promise, this something that really is beyond Sarah's wildest dreams, so far from her concept of what is possible. And she's thinking, she's laughing. And there are different types of laughter, and this is something that really emerges from this Sedra as well, and the Sedra previously. And Lamer saying, Acharei velosi hoisali edna, after I have withered, shall I again bloom? Va'adoni zoken, and my master is old. So we are privy to Sarah's thoughts, which is very, very unusual. There are 3 other situations in the Torah where we are told what people think. We are told with Aaron, we are told with Boaz, and we are told with Ruvain, and we are told with Boaz thoughts. But this is really very, very exceptional, and I think that this is really a very integral part of modesty. That what is private to me stays with me. You do not hear my thoughts. You hear my words. You don't hear my thoughts. And really, this I think is Sarah giving us an opportunity. And Sarah also has to confront her own thought processes in a very difficult to understand verses over here, because of the exposure, because of that internal thought process that is now shared eternally with everyone in the words of the Torah. And it carries on to get even more uncomfortable. Vayomer Hashem el Avraham lama zeh tzachaka Sarah. And Hashem says to Avraham, why did Sarah laugh? Lamer saying, Ha'af omnam eleg va'ani zakanti? Is it possible that I should give birth and I am old? And Hashem continues, Hayipoleh Hashem davar. Is anything beyond Hashem? Lamoed oshuv elecha ka'es chaya u'lesaraven. At this point, this time next year, Sarah will have a son. V'tachachash Sarah, and Sarah denied, Lema lo tzachakti, I did not laugh. Ki yorea, because she was scared. Vayomer, and he said, Lo ki tzachakt, no, you laughed. And this is especially in contrast with the laughter that we heard about in last week's Sedra, when Avraham is told. Similarly, he has a sort of a preview of what is going to happen. Hashem says, you are going to have a son, and with your wife Sarah. And that is in chapter 17, verse 17. And when Avraham hears this, Vayipol Avraham al panav vayitzchak, and Avraham fell on his face and he laughed. Vayomer belibo, and we also hear his internal dialogue, and he says in his heart, Halaven mea shana yivoled, shall there be a child born to somebody who's 100 years old? Ve'im Sarah havas tishim shana teled, and shall Sarah, a woman of 90 years, give birth? And there is no negative reference. And Sarah, we sort of have the biological details of Avraham and Sarah's age first, and then the fact that her reproductive organs are no longer functioning. And then we have the way Sarah is confronted, and she denies it. And what is going on here? Why is it so different with Abraham than it is with Sarah? So the explanations are given that the different kinds of laughter could be seen from Avraham and from Sarah. With Avraham, it was the laughter of joy. It was a sense of wonder. My goodness, I'm 100 and Sarah's 90, but it was joy. Whereas with Sarah, there was and the commentators define it as scoffing, that she's scoffing. How on earth is it possible? You know, my reproductive organs have withered. I can't possibly conceive and give birth. And we cannot conclude from this that Sarah is on a lower level of prophecy, because some verses later in chapter 21, verse 12, when Sarah is saying that Yishmael has to be sent away because he's a bad influence on Yitzchak, Hashem tells Abraham that everything that Sarah says, he should listen to her. And from that, we learn that she is actually on a higher level of prophecy than Avraham Avinu. So I don't think we can explain Sarah's words, thoughts, reactions as something that in any way diminishes her and makes her less than Avraham. And I think that on a very simple level, but I think that this really is the honesty of the text, that Avraham, as the man in this couple who are going to conceive and give birth to a child at the advanced age of 90 and 100 respectively, as the man, his part in that is not going to be as onerous and as literally, you know, within him. Sarah is going to carry the child in her womb. She is going to have to go through, on a physiological level, she is going to have to go through that pregnancy, that childbirth. She is going to nurse the child. And I think that this is why the Torah is giving us this biological detail, because, and this is our opportunity as well, the opportunity that speaks to Sarah and speaks to us for all time, that science may describe, biology may be able to say, yes, this person can have a child, this person can't have a child. And every child that's born is an absolute miracle, because the conditions before a sperm can get fertilized, and before and when a child grows and flourishes in the womb and is born, and everything goes well and safely. At every stage there are so many possibilities that things will go wrong, and every time a child is born, this is epic. This is a miracle of the hugest proportions, and possibly, and we could even argue on par, even though this isn't scientifically on par with what has happened to Avraham and Sarah here. But really, the odds are stacked against a successful pregnancy and birth. And really, this idea that if a doctor would come and examine Sarah and Avraham, he would say absolutely no chance whatsoever of these two having a child. And Hashem says they are having a child, and this is what happens. And so this is the opportunity that we have from Sarah's words and actions. And it was very interesting because, to hear what science, we've come so far, and with the technology, with the diagnostic tools, we can see and understand things that perhaps earlier generations couldn't. And sometimes science will make outlandish claims. And there was a recently published book called The Song of the Cell, describing the miraculous workings of every single cell in our body. And the scientist who writes it is an oncology specialist. And he is fascinated by cells and constantly studying them. And in the book, he talks about the effects of the SARS-CoV-2 virus's hijacking and subverting of the immune system itself. And he says, we still don't understand exactly how. The monotony of answers is humbling, maddening, the author writes. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. And so I think that this honest admission here from a scientist who does know and has spent his life studying and healing, and we can see from the opportunity of what has happened to Sarah and how it is described to us in the Torah, and we can feel with her, and we can understand why, as the woman who is going to go through this, it is even further from credibility for her than it is for Abraham. And yet she has to confront the fact that she was thinking originally it's not possible, and that's perhaps why she denies it, because she realizes it's wrong and she's afraid. But it's not in anger. It's just made very clear. You laughed. It was not the right kind of laughter, but this is something that we have all used as an opportunity to learn from, to learn that if Hashem says something is going to happen, it's going to happen. And if science says it's impossible, then science is going to have to learn to agree with Hashem. And this is an opportunity for us all to internalize that. Thank you very, very much for listening. Wishing you all a very good Shabbos.